Hi everybody, Harry here. So today we're going to be talking about my favorite Marvel comic series. And this particular series was never really popular. It happened during the 90s, during the bankruptcy of Marvel. And it is phenomenal, the stuff they got away with. And let's go into some details. So it's going to be this right here. X-Men Age of Apocalypse. So the entire theme to this comic, which started in Uncanny X-Men 319, was that Professor Xavier's son went back in time to destroy Magneto. Like, that's literally what he was going to do. He's going back in time, take him out, and it was going to fix the timeline so everyone had a nice, peaceful life. Well, while he was doing that, he didn't. He took out his dad instead. So the entire story is about how the world never knew Professor Xavier, never knew his peaceful policies, never had the X-Men in the way Xavier wanted, and that led to the Age of Apocalypse. The Age of Apocalypse is a story where Magneto is the one that formed the X-Men. He chose a pacifist agenda to preserve humanity. Apocalypse woke up 20 years early because of the events in the previous story, and he started his crusade before anyone was there to stop him. So he takes over the world. He causes one of the craziest genocides in history, and it is a phenomenal story. Now, the artwork can leave to the imagination. It's not the best artwork. Like, just looking at it, it's definitely typical 90s before Marvel went bankrupt artwork, but the themes behind this are absolutely amazing. So, pretty much to give you all a heads up, the way it works out is there's a lot of twists, and this is the first time Marvel really did like one of the first times, like a different dimension kind of thing, like the whole, like Earth, and they just assign it a number or whatever. It's the first real time they've done something like this, and it is one of the deepest stories. And it's easy to find. They have these bound collections that you can get for very cheap, and the story is very cut and dry. It's like there's a beginning, there's an ending, which is unlike a lot of Marvels, and the ending is a twist to where you're like, oh, okay, that's pretty intense. But some of the craziest things I've seen in the story, like it inspired Marvel Legends 2 Rise of Apocalypse. That entire game is based off of this. And there are things that happen in the story that are just insane. Like Cyclops missing an eye, Wolverine missing a hand. You have like all your dynamic stories like Colossus and Shadowcat. You have Gambit, Rogue, but now it's Gambit, Rogue, Magneto. It's like you got this triangle thing going on. Like it's crazy different. And just the amount of depth that they made for this story is insane. There is no way that they just made the story on a whim. It doesn't feel like a cheap gimmick. It doesn't feel like a cash grab. Like there's like, Xavier dies, but that's not really like the entire point of the story. That's like the setting for the story. Like that's the cause to the effect kind of thing. So it's really interesting because like the story gives you that intense dynamic feel. There is no changes to the story that don't feel right. So it's like no character personas. Like the character personas are different for a lot of people, but their backgrounds are different, and you understand why they're different. Like Cannonball, for example. Cannonball in X Factor was raised on a farm with his siblings, and then he developed powers, and then he ended up joining X Factor. He ended up being trained in his powers. That became part of he joined the New Mutants, then became part of the X Factor. Like, all of that kind of stuff, X-Force, all of that kind of stuff didn't happen. So now you have Cannonball was raised on a farm with his siblings. He developed powers. His entire family got wiped out by Apocalypse, but him and his siblings was spared because they had powers. And then they would train in those powers, and they ended up becoming like jailers. Like, they were a part of Apocalypse's elite guard that were in charge of the jail for humans. So it's like everyone has that different twist. So you have people that are on the X-Men that aren't supposed to be on the X-Men, like Sabretooth. And you got people that are off the X-Men that should be on the X-Men, like Cyclops. Because all their origins are different. And because of how the story is crafted, everything kind of makes sense. Like, you find out, like, why Mr. Sinister is the way he is. And kind of like, oh, okay, well, that's why he's not the way he is in the comics that I knew or the cartoons I knew. But if you're a fan of the X-Men, especially a fan of the Jim Lee X-Men, like the 90s cartoons or anything like that, then you love it. You will absolutely love it. It is the best Marvel story I've ever read. And that's saying a lot. I've dived into a lot of them. This is, hands down, best story. Best story. And they did a remake in the 2000s. Don't even bother. It's not even close to what this is. This story is so dynamic, it doesn't need a follow-up. You don't need to reinvest into anything else besides this. Just give it a read. Give it a read. I guarantee you will not be disappointed. I've never heard of a soul that did not like Magneto's X-Men. And it's pretty intense, the stuff they have in here. It's really intense. You find out about Apocalypse's son. You find out about the relationship between Wolverine and Sabretooth, for example. And then you find out about all these crazy people, like Beast is a bad guy in this. And he's a real bad guy. So definitely check this out if y'all haven't. It is literally the X-Men The Complete Age of Apocalypse series. You can see the logo right here. This is what the first book looks like. It is on actual glossy paper, so it's not cheap. It's very nice, very nicely detailed. And it's not my favorite, not my favorite art style. But if you're a fan of Japanese manga, for example, it's a lot like the Fist of the North Star future, in a sense. Like, they've just gone too far. They've ruined too much. There's no saving it. And it is a war from humans to mutants, and the mutants are winning. So definitely check it out. You'll really enjoy it. You'll really love it. Guaranteed one of the best things you'll ever see. All right, everybody. Harry, peace. Definitely check out the best Marvel story I've ever read, X-Men Age of Apocalypse.